How you doing? How you doing? Good? Let me make sure I can see you guys. There we go. Great to see everyone. Good to spend a little time together. Just one sec. Adjust my little map there. All right. Hey, welcome to Dynasty Live on this wonderful February 15th. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about strategy and skills in selling, specifically on insurance. So I'm going to go through, as I've done several times, but I'm going to be going through with you how I would recommend that you present a term and policy and then a combination policy. We'll go through building an illustration. We'll go through sales strategy and a nice simple process. And one of the things that I would encourage those of you that are new that don't know how to do this is that you master it pretty quickly. Those of you that have been around a little while is you're probably pretty good at it already. What you just want to make sure is that the process that you follow, it is pretty simple because you could do it in many different ways, but we like it to be in a nice flow that makes sense. So we'll cover a few things. First things first, let me talk to you about a little bit of flow in what I like to do on an insurance carryback. So the first step I want to do is I want to review the insurance amount we agreed on from last time. So that would be step one. So we would have pre-closed on some insurance amount. You know, you talk about 10 to 20 times and you end up whatever number you end up. I'm going to bring back and review whatever number we decided on and go through why we decided on that. So if it was $1 million, we'll talk about that. Here's why we decided on it. The second thing I'd like to do is then review the difference between term versus permanent. So I'm going to review that with them. And then what I want to do after I've gone through that is after I've reviewed term versus permanent, I'm then going to tell them how I'm going to show them an option of both. I'm going to show you one term, one combination. And then I would like to explain to you how the permanent option works. So then what I would do is explain, and we'll go through this, you'll see how I do it, but explain how permanent works. Then what we're going to do, step 4 would be show the term quote. Step 5 would be, the combination quote. And then step 6 would be the summary close. Okay. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about before we even jump into this stuff? Quite a few. Okay. If you don't, this will be good for you then. And for those that do, it'll be a good, quick little review. So those would be the 6 steps. So that's how I would make the flow of your insurance carryback. If you want to jot that down and then maybe practice it in that order. One of the things in getting great at closing is that it's not just what you say, but how you say it and the flow of it and the feel that people get that you know what you're talking about. So let's jump in first things first. I'm going to use IA. You can use whoever you want. I like IA's product. But let's go through building some illustrations. First of all, just to give you a little bit of an idea on doing that. If we were to build a term insurance quote first, I'm going to open up IA, pick a term I like to use because you can vary the terms. Let's say we were going to look at a 25-year term as an example. Just have to give this a minute. All right. Can you guys see the illustration software now? Yes. Okay, good. So let's say we're meeting with someone. We're going to meet with, doesn't matter what their name is. We'll meet with Mary Smith. So Mary is 01/01/1987. So Mary's 35. So we're meeting with Mary. Let's assume she's a non-smoker. We're going to put, of course, their info in there and say we were just going to do a term. Nice and simple, 25-year term. They just bought a home. So this is going to take them up till age 60. And let's say that we did agree on maybe $1 million of total coverage on the previous appointment. So I'll go through that in a second here, that pre-closing, but let's say we agreed on $1 million. Couple things that I like to do when you're building the illustration on here. If I'm doing a 25-year term, typically what I'll show, especially on the UL, is just a 25-year projection period. Often people aren't going to be renewing their policy after 25 years or 20 for that matter, because of course the premium is going to skyrocket. So a few other things in here that you want to do, whatever respective province you're in, then you're going to be putting the province there. So I'm in Alberta, and that's pretty straightforward on a term. Now, where we might get into is we might get into adding some different riders. So different things you could be doing is you could do a combination of some maybe 25-year term, some 20-year term. If their budget was a bit tight and you were going to do what's called layered term, that would be an option. You might add some child riders if they have kids and you want to put a child rider that covers the children. You might add some critical illness if you were to do that. So let's say we're going to add a critical illness on here. I would do the same length of term. So 25 year. And, somewhere in the neighborhood, generally for critical illness, again, depends on how much money do they make, what's their income level, what's their budget like. But I typically, my go-to would be somewhere around 50,000 to 100,000. So for simplicity, let's say 50,000. So now we have, very quickly, we have a term quote, nice and easy. I'm going to pause for a minute. Is there any questions on this stage so far? Okay, wonderful. So we've got that. Now our next step, oh, maybe we got one here in the chat. So help. Okay, thank you, Angela. Then the next one we're going to do is we're going to just add a new scenario. So I've already got Mary's info, add a new scenario. What do I want to do? I'm going to do universal life. Typically, most of the plans you're going to set up are going to be YRT, yearly renewable term. Quick refresher on that versus level. So level, the cost of insurance stays level their entire life, but you pay a much higher cost of insurance up front. YRT, the cost of insurance starts out much lower, but you'll pay more over time. Now, why would we choose YRT over level? Really simply, most of our clients, they have higher insurance needs today, and they need to build more wealth in the long term. So in terms of building wealth, YRT is going to be a better option most of the time for building wealth, because I have less cost of insurance now. So if I have less cost of insurance now, what does that mean for the amount of money I can put into the investment? More money can go to the investment, giving it more time to compound and grow. Hands up if you're with me. Good. So that's often why you would do most of the time YRT. Okay. To answer your question there, I typically don't use a 10-year CI to renew. Unless they were really tight budget, then I would use a 10-year CI. So all we're going to do, Mary's information is already in here. We're going to click Mary. Is there a time where I would recommend level? I'm trying to think of a time. I guess if somebody, the only purpose they wanted was no cash value, and they just wanted to pay a premium for their whole life and know that, a guaranteed rate and everything, you could use it. I haven't used it in that scenario, but you certainly could. Okay, so let's build a UL. So now we're into UL. Now, typically, most clients, when you're setting up, you're probably going to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 permanent on the low end to probably 100,000 on the high end. Once in a while, you might meet someone that makes some pretty good income. They need more room to tax shelter. Once in a while, you'll come across some business owners and they're doing a more corporate strategy and they require a greater need for permanent insurance. Or sometimes I found even in the farming community, they just want more permanent insurance sometimes. But most of the time, you're going to have somewhere in that 25, 50,000, 100,000. My go-to is around 50,000 to 100,000 of permanent. So let's say we're going to use 100,000 in permanent. What I want to do when I'm building these illustrations is I want them to be the same amount of coverage. So if I was to go back here, we did $1 million of total coverage for Mary on a 25-year term. So what we're going to do is make sure that we have $1 million of total coverage. So we've already got 100,000 of permanent coverage here. So then what we want to do is pick a 25-year term, because that's what we're showing her on the term, for then 900,000. She's already got 100,000. We're going to add 900,000, bringing her to a total of $1 million of coverage. So a couple quick things, just refreshers on this stuff. When you're presenting a term and then you're going to present a combination, my recommendation would be this. Sometimes because you like UL and you think it's great, they should have it. It is a great product, and I think most clients should. It's an awesome thing. But sometimes the budget might not be there. So then what you start doing is maybe you're lowering the amount of coverage on the UL, and the term's a higher amount, but the UL is a lower amount of coverage, but then they could get one. I wouldn't recommend doing that. What I want to show them is I want to show them apples to apples in terms of coverage. So if we're doing $1 million on the term, then we're going to do $1 million total coverage on the UL. I also like, for the life insurance specifically, I also want to show them the same length of term. So over here, we're showing a 25-year term So over here, I want to use a 25-year term rather than, oh, it's a bit more expensive, so I'm going to use a 20-year term on this one, a 25-year on that. I wouldn't do that. So I want to match it. Now, with all that being said, what's one exception that sometimes I'll do inside of a UL is on the critical illness. We could do a 25-year critical illness. Often, I do end up doing on here a term to 75 inside the UL. So that would be one exception to what I just said. When it comes to the life insurance, I'm going to do the exact same. But if the budget's there and we can get them a term 75 on the critical illness here, I like that. Okay, so we want to do the same amount of critical illness as we put together on the previous one, for sure. So although this term's a little bit longer here, we're going to still do the same amount of critical illness. So let's say we were going to do a 75-year, 75 critical illness with 50,000. All right, so a few things that need to happen on this page. One, of course, you're going to have to pick your province. Two, you're going to need to go down to applicant down here. So we have Mary as the insured. We want to make sure Mary's the applicant. If that's not lined up properly, you're not going to be able to go to the e-application later. And so we need to make sure that this is either A, matched, or B, if for some reason there was a different owner, then you would put that person there. All right, couple other things. Premium. So when we start getting into premium, I like to think of this. I know some teams do a little bit differently, but I like to think of 120 times the reference premium. This is the default premium. I like to think of this as the minimum premium that a client should put in my personal opinion. I know some people might do a little bit less. I wouldn't myself. I like to think of that as the minimum premium. Technically, the minimum premium, if you look right here, this is the minimum premium, but it's really not, because that's the cost of insurance. And if a client set this policy up and they just paid that, long-term, their policy would not work. So the reference premium is what they is what's based on how they calculate points. And then IA has the option automatically of 120 times the reference premium. So I know I'm repeating myself, but just for your notes, I would recommend that you consider that the minimum premium that a client would put in. Most of the time, what I like to do though, is I like to take that premium and add a little bit more. So again, everything's depending on their budget. Let's say Mary gave me $500 a month to work with, then I would probably do, if let's say this was the plan we're looking at, or $600 she gave me, whatever, I'd probably round this up to $200 for simplicity. A little bit more. So I'm going to go to specified. We know the reference premium is 176. I'm going to go to specified and bring that up to 200. Now you could just do it at 176 there. You could do it at 180. You could do it at 190. That's up to you. It all depends on how much they have. All right. I'm just going to make sure I stay on chat. I think I think all that stuff's getting answered in the chat anyway. So that's good. Yes. So exactly. Somebody put this in here. We want to change the projection period of the term to 25 years. Now on the actual term quote, it's less relevant because it's just going to show it on the illustration. So if that did say over here, projection period 25. So as an example, that says 40, we can change that to 25. It doesn't matter as much on the term quote. Where it does matter is on the UL and the combination quote. And the reason why this matters is that if this was projecting to age 65 or 40 years or whatever, then what it's going to show in the illustration is it's going to show it renewing. And because it's renewing, guess what? The premium is going to skyrocket. The cash value is going to be coming down. And most of the time, clients aren't going to need the same amount of coverage they need today as they are 25 years from now, nor do they want to pay the premium that they do. So a couple other things. What do I normally do? Again, I'm going to give you a real standard scenario. So a standard scenario, most of our clients are aiming to retire by 65 is kind of their game plan for the most part. Some trying to retire earlier, 55, 60. Majority of the time, we're going to pay this plan until 65. Where would some exceptions be? The odd scenario where a client's putting big money away, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month. They're well on their way to retirement and they actually can retire by 55. And that's when they truly want to retire and they're on pace to do it. Then perhaps we might show one to age 55. But the majority of the time for your average normal everyday client, we're going to show them paying until age 65. All right, just going to pause for a sec. Everybody good so far? Just taking a look at you all. As many of you I can see anyways. You guys look great this morning, by the way. Yeah. Especially you, Ben McClure. Okay, great. So we've got that. Now, a couple other things we need to do. We're going to go over to investments. Hey, inside different hierarchies, you might use different investments. So I'm very confident that whatever funds your SMD is recommending to you are great funds. You could use a combination. Some people might use 2, 3, 4 of them. I think some people might use 5 of them. IA, the nice thing is they have a lot of great funds. Even just to highlight some of the great ones that they do have, this Global Diversified by Loomis Sales, that's Loomis's Sales Asset Allocation Fund. It's a great fund, right? Really great, super strong balanced fund, one of the better balanced funds out there. Strategic Equity Income, that's a decent fund for sure. I like this Canadian Stocks Small Cap Fidelity. This is the Fidelity Canadian Opportunities Fund. Great fund, 9+% for the last 20 years. Big fan of the Dynamic Global Dividend. Super low, well, for an equity fund, what I would consider a low risk equity fund with really solid returns. Good stuff in there. I know some people like the healthcare fund. They might be adding that. Some people like the North Star. There's a lot of good options in there. Okay, plain and simple, there's a lot of good ones. So whatever ones you're using, let's say we were going to use this Loomis, this one, and this one. Let's just look at that for now, for argument's sake. Don't get too hung up on the specific ones. Okay, whatever ones you're using are good. Talk to your SMD about it if you want more clarity on it. The other thing you can do is you can go look at each of those funds. You can pull up, how they've done, and you can do a bit of research yourself too, so that you feel confident in yourself doing it. Now, inside of a UL, if I'm going to be using strong funds that have great track records like these 3, just as an example, what I would like to do, you could have bonds in there for sure. Most of the time, I typically don't. Only because if they're starting these out, they're going to be dollar cost averaging the whole time. And so I usually wouldn't add bonds in there, but certainly you could if you wanted to. Just for anybody's personal note too, this is a balanced fund, this one. So this one would have bonds in it as well too. But anyways, don't get too hung up in it. You can talk to your SMD about it. But if I'm doing solid funds like this that have track records, every single one of these funds has performed much higher than 7% in the long term. So I'm very confident in putting a 7% rate of return using these funds because they've certainly done better. Now, let's say they were in a conservative portfolio that you were doing, then perhaps you may not show 7, but in solid funds like these, good long-term returns, no problem showing 7. So what that's done for us is that's now automated the fact that we have where is that now? So we've already taken care of the interest rate. It's at 7. We've got her permanent coverage. We've got her term rider. We've got her critical illness rider. So everything looks great there. We've got her paying to age 65. Everything looks awesome. When you're with the client, you're going to need to do the investor profile. So when you're actually, the client says, yes, let's go ahead, I want to apply, then you're going to do the investor profile. If you don't do this, this is very important to write in your notes. If you don't do this, you're going to go all the way to the end of the application. And then it's going to say electronic signature is not available. So you need to do this investor profile with the client when it comes time to apply. So yes, I've done that too, Brittany, for sure. I just used the investor profile in the form there, Mark. All right, sorry guys, I'm just catching up. All right, I think we're good. We got some good people. Kevin, I think, yeah, you're right. It should say that to age 65. Thank you, my friend. So good catch there. We don't want to pay for 65 years. We want to pay till age 65. Thanks for catching that. Good call. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the results. We just want to make sure this policy looks good before we present it to the client. Oh, what did I do here? I see. There we go. So I didn't have the ratio in there. Again, don't get too hung up on this. You can do whatever you want with it. Okay. So now we're actually in. We're going to take a look at how this plan looks. I like to look at different markers. I like to look at the length of term as one of the markers. So as an example, Mary has a 25-year life insurance. So I like to see, well, what happens at 25 years? Now, looking at this as the advisor, what do I like about this plan? She's putting $2,400 for 25 years. I'm going to take out my calculator. Let's see what that is. So she would have put in 60 grand and she's got 69,000 back. Awesome. And then at the retirement age as well, so 30 years in, so that'd be $72,000 she would have paid, $2,400 times 30 years, and she's got significantly more than she contributed into it. So I do like that. So this plan looks great. So we're going to build a report. We'll generate that. We're going to build the term report as well. And then I'm going to go through the flow of how I would present this to a client. Okay, I'm going to pause. I see there's lots of questions that are getting answered by some of our great leaders. Anything else for anybody right now before we move on? All right, good. Okay, so let's talk about, again, the flow. So we've got our illustrations ready. I'll give you a little bit of prep stuff that I think is wise to do when we're prepping. So when I'm preparing for the client, not a big deal. I mean, you could have it on this page, but I like to be prepared just in that before I meet the client, I'm right on the page we need to be at. So I like to already have it ready. Okay, great. I'm on this page. This is clearly the UL one. We're doing $200 a month. I like to move it over because it's going to be the second one I'm going to go through. So I'm going to go through having the term ready first. Here we go. So we've got what we need here. Looking great. So we're ready to begin. Okay, so let's remember the flow. Step one, put step one in the chat. Oh crap, my notes are there. Hold on. Dang. All right, I'm gonna have to erase that. So close your eyes. Okay, step one. So I'm meeting with Mary. I say, hey, Mary, you know, last time we talked about was we ended up talking about having about $1 million in total coverage, if you remember that. And the reason why we did was two reasons. Number one was we wanted to make sure we could pay off any debts that you do have if you pass away. Between your mortgage, your car, your line of credit, that's about $500,000. Oh, quick side note, everybody, just going to pause for a sec. I like to do in pre-closing and in doing this, I like to round to the nearest 50,000. So if she owed 475, I'd say, hey, it's about 500,000. If she owed 440, I'd say, hey, it's about 450,000. So I like to round to the nearest 50,000. Okay. So you got about 500,000 in total debt. So if you pass away, we're going to pay that off. That would leave 500,000 left over. This would really be designed income for your kids or whoever, your spouse, whatever, right? So what we would want to do is take that money, invest it conservatively. Now you could say 6%, you could say 5%, both are fine. I use 5%. It's easier math for me. So that would generate about $25,000 a year of ongoing income. Do you remember going through that? She says, yeah, I totally remember that. I said, great. So that's one thing we're going to take a look at is $1 million in coverage. The other thing we talked about too was the difference between term insurance and permanent insurance. A little sidestep for a sec, everybody. Some of you guys have PowerPoints that you use inside of your teams. Use the PowerPoint. If you don't have that, I'm going to show you how you could do it on here. No problem. So the benefit to term is we're going to pay less money up front. That's the upside. The downside is it's kind of like renting insurance. You'll have it for a period of time. 20, 25, 30 years after that term is done. Either A, you cancel it and it's up, or B, you could renew it, but then your price is going to go up significantly. Permanent insurance, what's the downside here is it is going to take more money up front. Your advantage is a few. Number one, you own it. So you have that coverage forever till the day you die. And also we can structure it to get money back from it. So what I want to do today is show you one option where we do term and one option where we do a combination of permanent and term. Does that make sense to you so far? Any questions on that at all? I'm going to check in with the client. A couple quick things as you're explaining this stuff, guys, is you have to keep in mind, even if you've done this 80 times, 100 times already, some of us thousands of times, sometimes for these clients, this is the first time they're seeing it. So what you want to practice is not racing through it, talking super fast. You want to practice checking in with them. Does that make sense to you so far? Was there any questions you had on that at all? Things like that, because if you just race through it and you don't check in with them, they might have lost you 6 minutes ago. So now let's explain how the permanent option works, right? So I'm going to show you a term. I'll show you a permanent as well. Before we do that, I'm just going to explain to you, if we do the permanent, what that would look like, because it's a bit different than the term. The other thing you could do, everybody, is you could show the term quote first if you want, and then explain how the permanent works. That's fine too. I think the order you do it, no big deal either way. So let's take a look at, we would have had this pre-prepared, which I don't have right now, but let's go over to here. And let's take a look at our numbers that are important here so that we know when we're putting this together. If you're using your PowerPoint, then you're going to have the amount of coverage you agreed on, the amount of debt that they have. You're going to have how much is going to cost of insurance, how much is going to investment. You're going to have that already. If you were drawing it on here, then of course you would just know the numbers in advance. So the numbers are here. We're doing $200 a month, and then we're doing $119, the minimum premium. That's the amount to the cost of insurance. So if I'm explaining to Mary, I'd say, so with the permanent, if we do decide to do that, there's two sides to it. There's an insurance side and there's an investment side. Oops, hold on a sec here. So what we're doing is we're going to be putting $200 a month into that one. Of that, $119 a month is going to go to the insurance, and then $81 every month would go to the investment side. So the next month, $200 goes here, $119 to the insurance, $81 to the investment, the next month, the next month, the next month, so on and so on. So the question is, well, why would we do that? There's really three main reasons why we want to do it. Number one is you're going to get tax-free growth on your investment money. So while the policy is building up and the money is growing, it's completely tax-free. You won't have to pay taxes while it's growing. Number two is we can structure it to get tax-free income in retirement for you. So there's ways we can structure this that you could pull money out tax-free in retirement. Then number three is if you were to pass away, everything goes to your family tax-free, which isn't always the case with things like an RRSP, that kind of stuff. Does that make sense to you so far? And then I just make sure they're still with me. Any questions on that? Okay, good. So who's with me so far? Yeah? All right, wonderful. So what have we done? We've talked about the amount of insurance. We've talked about the difference between term and permanent. We've explained how permanent works. Now we need to go through the illustrations next. So that's if we were to do a combination, but let's focus on what a term insurance looks like first. So we're going to go back to here. So Mary, what we prepared here is that if we have a 25-year term, so this would take you up to age 60, your kids would be growing up at that point too, of $1 million of coverage, just like we talked about. Also having a critical illness coverage for 25 years. So there's 25 conditions this covers you for. The big ones are things like cancer, heart attack, stroke. I'll show you how those work. And that would be covered for $50,000. So if you were ever diagnosed with one of those conditions, you would get paid out that $50,000 tax-free, and you could use that for whatever you want. So let's say we looked at the term plan. We were going to do that. Pretty straightforward. It'd be about, just shy of $97 a month to get you that coverage. Any questions on that? No? What do you think about that so far? So I like to use that question. That's one of my favorites. Hey, what do you think about everything? What are your thoughts so far? And then there might not be a lot to think about at this stage, but she says, yeah, that looks great. Nice and easy. Okay, so that'd be a term. Let's say we are going to do the combination. This one's a little bit different because we're going to give you $100,000 of permanent coverage, $900,000 on a 25-year term. So what that means is for the next 25 years, you're going to have $1 million of coverage, just like the term one over here. But after 25 years, this term will fall off and you'll still be left with $100,000 of permanent coverage. Does that make sense to you so far? Excellent. Then we're also going to have $50,000 of critical illness. Now, let's say, guys, just pause for a sec, that we did use this one where we're covering her to age 75. If it was to age 25 year, that's fine. The only difference here, Mary, is that this one's actually going to cover you to age 75 as well, not just 25 years. So they'll take you up to age 75, and that would be $50,000 of coverage. So we're going to pay a bit more for the insurance. It would be about $119 a month. the way we have the plan, like I said, you'll be putting $200 a month into it. So 200 goes in, 119 covers the coverage, and then the remainder goes to the investment side like we talked about. Is that good so far? Okay. Now, let me show you a little bit more on how this actually works. So what we're looking at here is a few things. Number one, we're going to pay $200 a month or $2,400 a year up until you want to retire at age 65. Once you reach 65, if you see here, we're no longer going to be paying into that plan. So we'll just pay up until age 65. So that's one thing. The other thing, the rate of return. So it says 7.8. The investments we're quoting, we're quoting them at 7%. They've earned significantly higher than that in the long run. And this specific insurance company, IA, one of the reasons I like using them is they're going to pay you an extra guaranteed 0.8% rate of return every year on top of what the investment does. So I'll explain that. And I'll say there's two really important things we want to look at. There's your accumulation fund, and then there's your surrender value. Your fund, this is what your investment's worth, whereas the surrender value, this is what you have access to and what you could take out. So in the first year, you'll notice you've got about $980 built up in here, but you could only access about $400. So the downside to a plan like this, and I'll use that language, the downside to a plan like this is it's not very good for short-term savings. If we're looking at it for short-term, I'm not going to recommend we use it. Fast forward in time, by the time we reach year 10, you've got 14,000 built up in there, and you could access the full 14,000. But now, if we jump ahead a little bit, a couple numbers to take a look at. 25 years in, when you're 60 years old, you'd have about $69,000 in there. And by the time you're 30, you'd have about by the time you're 65, 30 years in, you'd have about $108,000 built up in the plan. Any questions so far? Yes or no? Okay, let's say there was no. And then what do you think about that so far? Check in, see what she has to say, he has to say. Great. So let me summarize this for you. This is the summary close. If you go back to your notes, the last part, summary close. Let me summarize this for you. Let's say that we were going to do the term option. I got to share my full screen. So what I like to do here, everybody, is I'm going to get my calculator out. So the client can see it. So let's say we do the term. The way the term is going to work, you're going to pay $96.93, 12 months a year for 25 years. So over the course of the 25 years, you'd end up paying about $29,000. You would have had the coverage the whole time, which is great. And at the end of that, if you decide you didn't want it, that's that. And we just kind of move on. So that's one option is we do that. The second option is we do the combination one. And I'll show you two scenarios. Number one, if you looked at the same 25 years, you'd be paying $2,400 a year for 25 years. So you would have invested $60,000. However, at the end of the 25 years, you'd actually have more than what you paid into it, about $69,000. Isn't that great? And if you take a look, by the time you're 65, so 2,400 for 30 years, you would have put $72,000 in, but you'd actually have over $108,000 in your investment side to the plan. So significantly more than what you contributed. So Mary, based on that, which one makes more sense to you? Do you like the idea of just the term, or do you like the combination with the money back? Whatever she says, right? She says, yeah, I'd like the combination. Well, great. At this stage, my recommendation is we apply for the insurance and see if you qualify. How's that sound to you? So that sounds great. Then we're going to go into the application. And of course, what we talked about earlier, if we need to apply, we need to start with the investor profile on there. All right. That is start to finish how I would do that. Okay. So we got a few minutes left, but that is the entire flow. I've been doing this for years and years and years. We teach our team to do the exact same. It works really well. It's easy. It's simple. It's a process you can follow. You do need to practice it so that it's smooth delivery in terms of your client following you the whole time. And one of the things, if you notice, I know I was talking to you guys sometime, talking to the client sometimes, but I do lots of stuff. Hey, does that make sense so far? Was there any questions you had at this point? What do you think about everything? Lots of that, lots of keeping them engaged, lots of having them ask questions. If there is any questions. The question, what do you think about this so far, is a great question, because it often will bring up, if there is objections, it's going to often bring up some objections they may have. Yeah. All right. Looks like you guys like it. That's good. If you didn't like it, it's okay. I still like you. It doesn't matter. Doesn't change the way I feel about you. Do I also highlight 85 and 90? No, I do not highlight 85 and 90. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm just reading through the chat here. See, it looks like everything was answered. Yeah, US stuff, there's definitely different rules if you're a US citizen. So just know that if you're meeting with someone that's a US citizen and Canadian, they do have different rules. Yeah. All right. Any questions? Okay. Mac. Oh, I don't know if you can unmute. You might not be able to. You might have to type it. So Hope asks, if the client asks why the coverage for perm is higher 119 versus 197. So Hope, in this specific one of the reasons why is we use the 75-year critical illness, not a 25-year. So that's going to cost more, and permanent just does take a little bit more money. So often permanent is going to be slightly more money than if we just did a term, but you're paying for the advantage of what you get. What is my answer to TFSA versus UL comparison? I'm not sure what the question is. Is the question what's better, a TFSA or UL? They're two totally different things. I think they're both amazing, right? People should be using both for the most part. ULs often, guys, you're not putting a lot of money into them for your everyday client, 150, 200, 250 bucks a month, something like that. Whereas TFSA, they should be contributing to that. I think they should be investing in that all the time. Why don't I use TFSA instead? Well, if you're not going to buy insurance, then of course a TFSA would be a much better option. But if you want some coverage and you want to be able to invest inside of it, it's a great way. So a couple quick things, just as we have a few minutes. It's a good question Andre is asking there. So why would I use that instead of a TFSA? So let's talk as an advisor why you may want to consider helping clients get these set up. We deal largely in the middle income market, correct? This is primarily who we're helping, the normal everyday family. With the normal everyday person, their money habits are also not very strong. Agreed? If people had better money habits, they would be more financially successful. Makes sense, right? We're a product of our habits. So one of the things you're going to run into, as I've done this the last almost 15 years now, is that you're going to set up great plans for clients that if they stick to their plans and they follow through on, they're going to work pretty well. But often there is times where they don't do that. And then they go to cash out of their TFSA. They want to buy a new car. Their hot water tank goes, X goes, whatever. They want to go on vacation. It's stuff that happens. Even though you've advised them not to do that, it is things that happens once in a while. So one advantage why I like setting people up with ULs, as well as a TFSA, not either or, but as well as a TFSA, is that it becomes a very good forced savings habit for our clients. What happens is if they are going to take money out, it's often out of their TFSA, but they usually don't think to take it out of their policy. And also in that first 10 years, it's not advantageous to take it out. Now, what's our job? Our job is to help people retire. Our job is to help people get financially independent. So we have to work sometimes with that. So it's a great forced savings. The other thing it does, sometimes when things get tight, they stop their TFSA, their RSP contributions, but they keep paying their life insurance. And so because they keep paying their life insurance, they keep investing. And if they just had a term, they wouldn't be investing anything. And then you just know, like I get my statements sometimes, guys, and I look at how much money's in there and man, that's amazing. I forget about it. I'm in the business. So yeah, CJ says in there, I can't count how many times clients forgot about their ULs and surprised how much they have. 100%. Yeah. Side little note too. It's not about one better than the other. They're both phenomenal. Use them both, right? Should you exercise or eat healthy? You should probably do both. You know what I mean? But Clint put a note in there, Clinton, that UL has more potential for growth. So fund to fund, you could argue that because you get a bonus interest for sure. No, I do not tell them they're forced savings. No. Yeah. Yeah. Good. I like it. Let me check my phone, make sure we got our winner here. Here we go. So our winner, first of all, and I'll chat a little bit for a few more minutes, but our winner of the Millionaire Mentorship Call today is Christoph Notelet. I don't know if I pronounced your last name right, but congratulations, Christoph. You will be having your mentorship call with Paxton, so you can reach out to your SMD about that. And everybody, listen, just as you're working on this stuff, again, some of you guys are very smooth at this already. You're very good at it, right? You're very good at delivering it. Some of you, that may not be the case. And if you're not really great at it yet, then take some time to practice this. And if you say, well, I'm not fully field trained yet, so I would still learn how to do it. You're going to need how to do it at some point. So why not practice it? Practice it until you feel confident that you can deliver it smoothly, that you say, yeah, I'm 10 out of 10, right? How many times would you need to go through that so you could be 10 out of 10? I don't know, 20, 30, 50 maybe. But however many it takes, even if it took you 100 and you were 10 out of 10, how much more effective would you be in front of clients? If your skills are better, are you going to get better results? It makes sense. If your skills are better, you're going to get better results. So keep that in mind. If you don't feel 10 out of 10, then schedule some time and practice that. I would get 10 out of 10. Yeah. Just as we close, one of the things that I think everybody on the call, you say, well, I would like to make professional money right now. And hopefully you do want to make professional money. Professional money is good money. You don't make professional money with amateur skills. You make amateur money. I mean, that's the way that it works, right? In all things, amateur sports players don't get paid pro money. Amateurs in business don't get paid pro money, but pro skills here, what's amazing about pro skills here? How fast do you have to be? How fast do you have to skate? Not fast at all. You just got to be able to explain things. And it doesn't take that much to get good at this stuff. So again, if you're not 10 out of 10, this is only one component of the business, but go and get it done. Spend some time this week, schedule some time to get better, schedule some time to work on your craft. So then you continue calling people, doing appointments, doing the work, and you continue getting better. And if you take your ability and you multiply it by your effort, you're going to get exponential results in the business. That being said, have an amazing rest of the day, everybody. Great to be in business with every single one of you. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.